Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about my high metabolism. This is a video I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and I want to explain to you the good and the bad, because there is bad with it as well, and just my natural experiences to you about it. And I think it's very informative because there's a lot to be said about it. So let's just get started, and I think you'll definitely get a better insight on what it's like. So I've been told countless times by numerous individuals and acquaintances, friends, family, other people, on many separate occasions that, wow, you can eat, or wow, you can just consume everything, or man, this man, for a skinny guy, you can eat, or sometimes just you can eat. And a few times I've been told that I can eat more than a portly or overweight man. And from my experience, it seems to be true. From my observations, are people who are overweight who eat just as much, if not more, than me. And there are others who eat very, very little or just average, and they just have very, very bad metabolisms, and they're just severely overweight. So I just want to touch on the topic for you, and I know a lot of you guys might be like, "Oh my goodness, you're so lucky," and so forth. I am very thankful for it, but to just assume that because of this one thing, you're not going to have a bunch of difficulties and troubles in other areas of your life is judging a book by its cover. For me, it's very true. I don't want to get into that, but that's let's just focus on the food, okay? So ultimately, though, basically, if you haven't already figured, what this means is that I can eat a lot of food and I won't get fat. I'll maintain my skinniness. And what I learned is that, heck, in this day and age, it's very advantageous. 1,000 years ago, before evolution and technology and so forth, it wasn't so because there's a lack of food. Heck, the people with low metabolisms probably survived in the Holocaust when those without did not. I would have been one of those in the Holocaust who would have experienced a very painful starvation very quickly on. And I can go on and on. That's just the nature of natural selection in biology, which I've studied a lot on. It's just sometimes traits will just be more beneficial. It's just the luck of the draw. But let's just talk about other things. Let's start with the bad things about it. This is one of those things that really, it's not that bad. It's like being good looking. A lot of people think being good looking or really, really good looking is like a complete blessing. It's not. There's a lot of like falsities with that as well. Just as being very, very rich. Uh, if you're good looking, you get a lot of people who are jealous. Same with being rich. You get a lot of people, just as being with rich, who fake trying to be friends with you, or only friends with you because you're rich, and yada yada yada. And you'll get people who won't treat you like a normal person, or they'll just put you on a pedestal constantly, and you're never really sure, and you can become pretty paranoid about people. For food, it's somewhat like that too. I think for being rich and being good looking, they're both different ballparks. But having a high metabolism is something that's it doesn't have too many downsides. One of the biggest ones, though, is actually very, very important. I learned this numerous times throughout my life. One of them being when I tried out for my soccer team in high school. What I learned is that although I might look skinny on the outside, my insides are still just as messed up as an overweight person. And throughout my study of health and heart conditions and heart disease and heart attacks, which are like the primary killer of most people, it's scary because, heck, just to illustrate for you, it took me like 4 more minutes to finish the mile run than the person in front of me. just to illustrate for you. And that's crazy because the whole thing can take someone only 5-6 minutes to finish. And there's about 50 to 100 people who tried out for that soccer team. Needless to say, I was the last person there. So it's just one of those things to illustrate that it will definitely affect your heart, cloggage, blood vessels, your inner health, even if on the outside you look fine. And I think a lot of people, a lot of skinny girls or skinny guys, they don't realize that. And it's really made me think about health and fitness and exercising. In addition to that, there are periods that you can just go overboard too. And looking back on my childhood photos, I realized that there were periods where I was no longer skinny. I was visibly overweight or obese, and I think I'm starting to let it go a little bit too much, though I'm doing decently well in terms of healthy eating and so forth now. But it is one of those things, no matter how high your metabolism is, I do think that there's a ceiling for every person. And if you just let it go with reckless abandonment, you will get overweight no matter what. And there were times when I let that slip. But I distinctly remember during those times I thought I was still skinny, and it was one of those things, you know. So I do think that eating a lot is, that's like the biggest downside. With that said, though, I do think, if you haven't seen from my other videos on food, I am a really good eater. I love eating. I've been exposed to some decent foods in my life. I'm sure that, watching some TV shows where like people travel to different places and eat the best foods in the city, there's probably been people who have been exposed to better foods than I have. But I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to a lot of good foods, a lot of fancy buffets, a couple restaurants here and there, fast food of course, and so on. And then there's plenty of good stuff, frozen foods at Costco, Giant, and so forth. So I like to eat, and I've eaten quite a lot. There's times when I was at some sort of buffet or family style setting, and my plate was just like, this was the plate, and it was mounted this high, and all of it went down my throat. And it's one of those things, like, it can definitely incur a lot of jealousy, but it's one of those things that I finally understood it when I realized that envy is one of the stupidest things ever. That's one of the things that Charlie Munger, who I very much respect, has taught me recently. It's just one of those things where it's just like, you don't know how counterproductive envy is and how little benefit it does for you. And on top of that, you're typically judging someone based off something when it's not the full story. It's like, okay, now I kind of understand it, because people are like, wow, you're so lucky. I have to eat salads every day. You can eat whatever you want. It's disgusting. First off, it's like, I kind of understand now, because it's like, okay, when you look at someone for being rich or being born with inheritance or being born good looking, now I realize a lot of those things can become weights on your shoulder. Not just the jealousy and the paranoia, but the fact that with inheritance, it's like you don't know if you're ever worthy of anything or if you can get there without it. And then you probably looked at a lot of people as just being, envious of you. From my readings of some people with inheritances, that's definitely the case. And you can go on and on about that. But, for me, eating food's been pretty great. I've been able to eat a lot and take it in. And for me, buffets, I did a video a few years ago on buffets. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. Plus, my parents are like, hey, you gotta eat the expensive food. I paid you this much for the buffet. You better eat that seafood. Lay off the cheap food. Lay off the fried rice. Go to that seafood. And for me, buffets were huge. I would just like eat mountains of food, and I'm pretty sure, maybe not, but I'm pretty sure I got my money's worth more than most people who went to buffets. Um, I think it's a male thing, and I think it's just a high metabolism thing too, just eating everything. And I love my meats. I've been starting to like vegetables and fruits too. There's a rare occurrence where there's like a girl who can do that too, um, but it's one of those things. And yeah, I think one thing though is that what I've learned is that eating healthy is something that I've sort of incorporated anyways, after reading a lot on case studies of very healthy people who were much more fit and active than me, and still getting a lot of problems later in life because of how they ate. There's this one case study of a very, very accomplished runner who had won many tournaments and marathons, and he would exercise relentlessly. And I still remember this quote. He said that I always thought that if the furnace was hot enough, it didn't matter what I put in there. Basically, he went to get milkshakes and stuff after his 4 hour or 10 mile runs every day, and that just shocked me because I was, uh, after my stage of that, just like constant eating, I went to a phase where I realized, heck, I should get more fit. So I started running and jogging and exercising, and I realized how much good it did for me. It made me feel better. It made me work harder, and I just felt much healthier from it. And I eventually built, through a lot of work ethic, a pace